Today we're going to be making miniature quilts inspired by the Gee's Benz artists. We're using a special kind of paper that is called Infusible ink. This paper has light colors on it, and when it is heat set onto a piece of fabric, the colors become much richer and darker and permanent. You might want to start by sketching out an idea, and it's okay if your idea changes from your sketch to your quilt. So I loved some of the quilts that had these striped patterns, but they weren't really stripes, they were more triangular. I borrowed some of those shapes. I borrowed the rooftop pattern, and I'm just using some geometric shapes to fill up my space. The next step is going to be to start cutting up the infusible ink paper. We're going to end up sticking this paper to transfer tape. So all of your shapes have to be side by side and not overlapped. They can overlap a teeny bit, but for the most part, they need to be side by side. If you end up having a small shape that you need to fit inside another one, what you can do is something like this. I cut out that little tiny rectangle at the bottom, and I want to fit it inside a larger rectangle. So the rectangle is red, the smaller piece is that green color, and I'm just going to lay one on top of the other and trace it with my pencil. Once I have the shape traced, I can cut out a hole, and this will allow me to fit those pieces side by side. You'll notice that I filled up most of my square with paper. I do have a couple spaces where I left gaps, and that's because I want to see the white of the fabric coming through, but for the most part, every little centimeter of that square is filled. And now I'm ready to start using the transfer tape. So you're going to need to pull off the backing, but please don't throw that away. We might need it when we clean up today. So usually what I do is I put the papers down sticky side up. I put the backing underneath it because the grid helps me to see where my papers are going to be placed. And you're just going to one by one move each of those pieces of paper over until they're all stuck to that transfer tape. Now remember that nothing should be wasted. So when you're done transferring all your papers before you clean up, please help me collect all those little extra scraps. We're going to use them for future projects. If we have to clean up early, you're going to take the backing of the transfer tape and put it over the top of your design so it doesn't stick to anything. But if we have time today, we might be able to press a few of these projects. So here's how the heat transfer process works. You're going to take your collage, put it face down on a piece of felt. You'll notice that the felt is sitting on top of a wool pressing mat. That's going to help protect whatever surface we're using the heat press on. So your project goes face down. A sheet of Teflon or butcher paper is going to go over the top to protect the press. And then we're going to put the heat press on top of that, and we're going to press it at 385 degrees for 40 seconds. I know the heat and the timing basically because I did a bunch of experiments with this type of fabric and this type of ink, and that ended up being the best setting to get the brightest colors. You do need to add a little bit of pressure while the timer is going, so don't take your hands off the press. But now that the 40 seconds is up, we're going to lift up that sheet of paper. Be careful because your project will be warm. You shouldn't get burned, but it should be warm. And I'm going to flip over my transfer tape and check out what happened to the colors. Up in the left side of the screen, you can see the original collage. And on the right side, you can see what happens after it has been attached to a piece of felt with some heat. You might also notice that there's very little color left on the original collage because all of the pigment has been transferred to the fabric.